Moving on to long ball number 2 here on Friday. A weird one. The Juventus football team was invited to the White House. They got to meet the president of the United States, but that kind of photo op meet and greet didn't maybe go the way that many thought a soccer team visiting a president would go.
What's frustrating about this, I mean, whatever your sense of the politics or the things that were presented in this moment, is that what's frustrating is that, and look, I guess because Tim Weah and Weston McKennie were there, it is more sort of resonant for Americans. But even if they weren't, using players as props in any of this is just distasteful. Like, it's just wrong. Like, and there was a time, and I don't know, Rob, maybe this is going to be an old man shaking his fist at the clouds kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But there was a time, and look, I grew up, not to say I have a better moral sense than anybody else. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I grew up as the son of an Air Force officer, right? Like, so the idea of sort of like integrity and respect and honor and sort of representing the country and put, like, I would never do anything to embarrass my dad, right? Like, I had to be keenly aware that when I was in public, I sort of represented him. He may not have been a higher up at any point in his career. He didn't make general. He ended up pinning on colonel before he retired. But there was still this sense, like, you're on an Air Force base. It's a small little world. It's like a community. And so you become like, not the first family, but there are vibes like that, right? My mom had a role to play. I had a role to play. And maybe they're antiquated, but that was the thing. And there was this sense of, like, again, the integrity of the office or the integrity of the position. If you're a commander, you act this way and you do these things. And that is all out the window. And now you throw in my favorite sport with a couple of players who represent my national team that I care very desperately about. And the whole thing is nauseating. It's just nauseating. It sucks.
Yeah, there was a number of things that were just odd about this whole situation. There was a quote from Tim Weah, son of a former national ruler, which I'm sure our president
ruler. That's a weird way. He was the president of Liberia.
Former president. Okay, former president, former head dignitary, a head of state. Is probably the best way to put that. He said that he had no choice of going there. There was no yes or no. They had no idea that there was going to be like a press conference sort of thing going on in there.
I wonder, should Juventus have said no? Could Juventus have said no? Obviously, Gianni Infantino was also there. Like, this feels very much like Johnny is putting on a show. He loves being close to the power. He's buddy with Trump around this. He's got the Club World Cup happening in this country. Obviously, the World Cup happening next year. Although there's some sort of there are some troubling developments in the world of athletics and sports. And the Senegalese women's basketball team was supposed to do a pre-African tournament camp in the U.S. and were denied entry. They didn't get their visas, so they had to cancel their trip. And that, like, how does that mesh with we're doing a World Cup here? Right. Like, and people will say, the whole thing about, like, people not being allowed in the country if they are just the average people who want to follow the national team. If you come from a country that harbors terrorists or whatever, you shouldn't be allowed. I had some people in the comments when we talked about this recently. That travel ban it's more important that we keep the country safe. Yeah. All that stuff. Okay, fine, whatever. Again, to sort of throw a general blanket over an entire group of people because there are a couple of bad actors. Maybe just do your due diligence on those bad actors. But anyway, that thing is okay, whatever. Maybe you're saying you're keeping the country safe by not letting millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people into the country from a given nation. But athletes? You can't have a tournament if there are no athletes here. And again, this whole thing with the play acting and the photo op and those guys having to stand behind Trump at the Resolute desk, it just brings us all down, right? It brings down the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm sure they didn't wake up. The players didn't wake up that day thinking that they were going to be in the talks and in the room fielding questions about a nuclear potential interaction. Nate popping in the chat for that, and it was interesting too that President didn't get up to shake hands. I'm guessing your Air Force father probably would have shook hands if someone entered his office. I would assume that much. And then it was interesting when the president
Is he
was.
capable of standing, by the way? Is he capable? Every time I see this stuff, he's sitting at that desk, leaning over that desk. Which again, like you said, whatever your politics, shouldn't the president of the United States, like we got Richard Nixon juggling a soccer ball with Pele. Well, why is he not at least engaging these people as welcome? I don't know.
That's actually probably a fair point, that as from a staging perspective, that sitting down might be the safest or most presentable way to have him have any sort of a public event at this point. But I thought it was telling about kind of like the hierarchy of a team and what leadership in a team kind of meant, because when things got to like their peak awkwardness, when the president was trying to bait them into saying that like women couldn't play on their team and asking them questions about sending nuclear missiles and stuff, they were all deferred to the manager. They all looked over at him like, help us, coach. And he did, to their relief. And the president, to his chagrin, was like, oh, you guys are pretty diplomatic, aren't you? And I thought that was a pretty good display of like kind of sticking up for your players, like not having to answer things that they were clearly uncomfortable. I think one of my skills is reading body language and trying to make people comfortable in situations. And it didn't take an expert to notice that those players were probably as uncomfortable as it gets.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's unfair to them to put them in that situation. It's not how, again, if you're going to say, well, we're going to have Juve over to the White House to celebrate the Club World Cup here, and the Juve is playing, they played in DC, and fine, that kind of thing is pretty normal. Like, and we're doing this thing now where every choice made by any sports team around the visit to the White House signals something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so remember when there was a moment when people thought the Eagles weren't going to go to the White House as Super Bowl champions, and like,
Yeah.
oh, go Eagles. Some people, obviously on one side of the political spectrum, were saying, go Eagles, good job. Obviously, they didn't they ended up, they did choose to go to the White House. And it's like, there have been times in this country where it wouldn't have mattered what your politics were. Going to the White House was an honor. Didn't matter if you agreed with the president, voted for the president, whatever. And he would always be this, no understanding what the point of it was, right? To celebrate their success, but not to politicize that moment or to bring things in that are divisive, that are causing the kind of split across the country that is now erupting into all kinds of forms of protest and violence and that kind of stuff. Like, it's just gross. And I don't think, like, it doesn't matter whether you support Trump or not. It's gross. You should recognize that that's not how the president of the United States is supposed to comport himself.
Kate in the chat. Yeah, keep the conversation going here. Interactive show and all. Kate, my fear is the worst case scenario. Trump continues to escalate. FIFA cuts the U.S. out of the approaching World Cup. That would be a fear under normal circumstances, but you think Infantino, president of FIFA, is right there side by side, shoulder to shoulder with these displays, and it doesn't seem like he is eager in any way. He's almost like encouraging it. He's there with this lockstep,
Yeah.
at least publicly.
Yeah. Well,
I don't see that happening.
He's just a craven moron. I mean, he's not a moron. He's a smart guy, but he's just again, Johnny Infantino does not have a moral compass, does not have a sense of right and wrong when it comes to this stuff. He just wants his events to go off. And again, he's had to come out and say, "Oh, I've been promised by the president there will be no problems for the World Cup next year."
Scouts
But
honor.
we know that that's not something you can count on. The word of the president of the United States in that regard. I mean, we just can't. I don't know.
Let that just rest out there.
Yeah, I don't know what this means for next year. It's obviously gross and ugly, and I feel bad for not without knowing whether Tim Way or Weston McKennie like him, don't like him, agree with his politics, don't. Obviously, there's some of this has been wrapped up in Christian Pulisic's behavior in the recent past. Like, is he a Trump guy? People, if you don't like Trump, you get upset about that. If you like Trump, good for I don't even think that matters. They were just uncomfortable. It should not have been. Let's ask the soccer players what their position on transgender athletes is. It shouldn't have been that way.